When dreams find their voice. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Grand Theater in Manila, casting long shadows across the empty stage. Marcus Chen stood in the wings, his worn guitar case resting against his leg, watching the crew prepare for another day of auditions. The theater smelled of old wood and fresh paint, a mixture that reminded him of every dream he'd ever carried and every disappointment he'd carefully tucked away. Marcus was 32 years old, though people often told him he looked younger. He had kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, and hands calloused from years of playing guitar at small venues around the city. His black hair fell slightly over his forehead, and he wore a simple white shirt with jeans, the same outfit he always wore when he performed. It made him feel authentic, like himself, even when nerves threatened to shake him apart. Today was different from all the other small shows. Today was his audition for America's Got Talent Manila 2025, and the theater was slowly filling with people. Contestants, producers, camera operators, and judges were all moving through the space like pieces of a carefully choreographed dance. Marcus had waited 5 years for this opportunity, 5 years of singing in hotel lobbies and restaurant corners, 5 years of people walking past without really hearing him. His mother had encouraged him to audition. She'd been the one to show him Elvis Presley's music when he was just 7 years old, playing scratchy records on their old turntable in their small apartment in Quezon City. Marcus remembered sitting on the floor, completely mesmerized by the voice that poured out of those speakers. It was powerful yet tender, confident yet vulnerable. Even as a child, he'd felt something shift inside him, like a door opening to a room he didn't know existed. "That's real music, anak," his mother had said, using the Tagalog word for child. "That's what it sounds like when someone sings with their whole heart." Marcus had spent the next 25 years trying to do exactly that. Now, as he waited for his number to be called, he felt the familiar weight of doubt settling on his shoulders. He'd been told countless times that his voice was good, that he had talent, but in a city full of talented singers, good was never quite enough. The Filipino music scene was vibrant and competitive, filled with incredible vocalists who could hit notes that seemed impossible. What made him think he could stand out? The production assistant, a young woman with a clipboard and a kind smile, approached him. "Marcus Chen, you're up in 10 minutes. He nodded, his throat suddenly dry. "Thank you." She paused, studying his face. "First time auditioning for something this big. Is it that obvious?" Marcus asked, managing a weak smile. "You've got the same look my brother had when he auditioned last year," she said gently. "Just remember, they're looking for something real. Something that makes them feel something. Don't try to be perfect. Just be honest." Marcus thanked her again, and she disappeared into the organized chaos backstage. He picked up his guitar case and moved toward the stage entrance, his heart beating steadily but insistently in his chest. Through a gap in the curtains, he could see the judges taking their seats. The American judge, Sarah Williams, was laughing at something one of the Filipino judges had said. The cameras were being positioned, the lights adjusted. Everything was ready except him. Marcus closed his eyes and thought about his mother. She'd passed away 2 years ago, just before the pandemic lockdowns had shut down the city. In her final weeks, when the illness had weakened her voice to barely a whisper, she'd still asked him to sing for her. Not his own songs, but Elvis. Always Elvis. "Love Me Tender" had been her favorite, and Marcus had sung it to her the night before she died, holding her hand in the dim hospital room, his voice cracking with grief but never stopping. "Don't hide your gift, anak," she'd whispered to him that night. "The world needs to hear what I hear when you sing." He'd promised her he would try. He'd promised her he wouldn't give up. "Marcus Chen, you're on." The words cut through his memories like a gentle bell. Marcus took a deep breath, picked up his guitar, and walked onto the stage. The lights were brighter than he'd expected, warm and almost overwhelming. He couldn't see the judges clearly at first, just shapes behind the glare, but he could feel hundreds of eyes on him, cameras capturing every nervous movement. He reached the center of the stage and stood before the microphone. The theater had gone quiet, that particular silence that comes when people are waiting to be impressed or disappointed. "Hello," Marcus said, his voice surprisingly steady. "My name is Marcus Chen, and I'm from Quezon City." "Welcome, Marcus," Sarah Williams said warmly. "What will you be performing for us today?" Marcus adjusted his guitar strap. "I'm going to sing Can't Help Falling in Love, by Elvis Presley. One of the Filipino judges leaned forward with interest. That's a bold choice. Are you a big Elvis fan? My mother was, Marcus said simply. She taught me that music isn't just about hitting the right notes. It's about making people feel something true. Sarah smiled. That's beautiful. We're ready when you are. Marcus positioned his fingers on the guitar strings. For a moment, he felt frozen, caught between the memory of every small stage he'd ever played and the enormity of this moment. Then he thought about his mother's hand in his, her eyes closing as he sang to her one last time, and something inside him relaxed. He began to play. The first notes floated through the theater like something tangible, something you could almost touch. Then Marcus opened his mouth and sang, and the world seemed to tilt slightly on its axis. His voice was Elvis. Not an imitation, not a copy, but something that carried the exact timbre, the exact warmth, the exact heartbreak that had made Elvis Presley's voice legendary. It was uncanny and beautiful, surprising and familiar all at once. The words, "Wise men say, only fools rush in," came out with a richness that filled every corner of the theater, reaching the back rows and the highest balconies. Marcus wasn't trying to sound like Elvis. He was simply singing the way his heart knew how, the way 25 years of loving this music had taught him. His eyes were closed now, and he was somewhere else entirely, somewhere that existed only in the space between notes, in the pause between one word and the next. In the judges' panel, Sarah Williams's mouth had fallen open slightly. The Filipino judges had gone completely still. In the wings, crew members had stopped working to listen. Throughout the theater, people were pulling out their phones, capturing this impossible moment when a young Filipino man's voice carried them back to 1961, to a time when Elvis had first sung these words. Marcus sang about rivers flowing to the sea, about taking hands and taking whole lives too. He sang with his mother's memory wrapped around every word, with 5 years of hotel lobbies and empty restaurants, with every dream he'd been afraid to dream too loudly. The guitar accompanied him like a heartbeat, steady and sure. When he reached the final notes, he let them fade naturally, not rushing, not forcing. The last, "I Can't Help Falling in Love with You," hung in the air like a prayer, like a promise. Like everything true and honest in the world distilled into one perfect moment. Then silence. Marcus opened his eyes slowly, suddenly aware of where he was, worried that he'd somehow failed in a way he hadn't noticed. But then the theater exploded into sound. The audience was on their feet, screaming and applauding. The judges were standing too, Sarah Williams with tears streaming down her face, the Filipino judges shaking their heads in disbelief. "That was extraordinary," Sarah said when the noise finally died down enough for her to speak. Her voice was thick with emotion. "I've heard 1,000 Elvis impersonators, and you're not one of them. You're something else entirely. You're the real thing." The other judges agreed enthusiastically, piling praise on top of praise. But Marcus barely heard them. He was looking out at the audience, at all those faces lit up with joy and surprise, and he felt something break open inside him. Not break like something damaged, but break like dawn breaking, like winter breaking into spring. They gave him 4 yes votes, of course. They would have given him 10 if they could. As Marcus walked off stage, his guitar in hand, the production assistant who'd spoken to him earlier was waiting in the wings. She was crying and laughing at the same time. "You did it," she said. "You really did it." Marcus nodded, still dazed, still processing what had just happened. But more than anything, he felt peace. He'd kept his promise to his mother. He'd shown the world what she'd heard all along. Outside the theater, the Manila afternoon was hot and bright. Marcus sat on the steps, his guitar beside him, and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, he hoped his mother was smiling. He hoped she knew that her gift had finally found its moment, her son's voice had finally found its audience. And for the first time in 5 years, Marcus Chen knew exactly what came next. Not fame or fortune necessarily, but simply this: he would keep singing, keep sharing what his mother had given him, keep making people feel something true. The world was listening now. And he had so much more to say.